Is there a way back for Vladimir Putin? Welcome to Mark and Pete Live. I'm Pete the Clergyman. With me as ever is Mark the Businessman. So, what's the future for Putin then, Mark? What's going on in this with this Russian dictator?
Well, it's getting serious. If
Hmm.
it wasn't already serious enough with the conflict with Ukraine, we now see that Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned his Finnish counterparts that joining NATO and abandoning Finland's neutral status would be a mistake. Now, what he's really highlighting here is that the idea of a neutral territory on his borders is something that he's enjoyed for many, many years. But of course, as we've seen with Boris Johnson and many others, sort of actually engaging with the leaders of Finland, trying to sort of get them to sign up to NATO, that is, from Vladimir Putin's perspective, something of a potential threat. Well, this is getting worse now. Where is this going to lead? And as I see it, I can only see this escalating even further. But what is really going on here? There is the conflict in Ukraine. Clearly, that is serious. Innocent people have died. More importantly, is that we're seeing Russians getting certainly more uptight at the fact that the West are seeing them as the villains. Now, is it just simply a Western view? Is it just simply maybe a thought to consider, a grudge to bear? Here we go.
Okay.
Vladimir the dancing bear liked to growl and always scare. He wildly ruled with fiery flair and roamed around and blew hot air. He invaded pantries everywhere, then ate lunches of those in despair. He would bear arms here and there. Other animals could not bear this bear. One day they made a bear ensnare when Vladimir was just unaware, until they trapped and tied him to a chair and skinned the bear until he was bare. Now Vladimir was never Fred Astaire, so the sorry scene ended in disrepair. He never danced again at a foreign affair. Now he bears the brunt of those who care. Clergyman Pete, I ask you, do you believe that there's any way back for dancing Vladimir the bear?
Well, I'd like to see that dance, but I think that it's interesting how Putin and Russia have become increasingly isolated from the Western world, from I guess the arbiters of peace like NATO and the United Nations, and he's been isolated in terms of trade as well. There was a time when, the people would laugh at a well-known politician by the name of Trump suggesting you shouldn't be too reliant, specifically he was talking about Germany, shouldn't be too reliant on gas supplies from Russia. And now the moves are in that direction with
Oh, yes.
talk from the European Union, from von der Leyen, the president, saying that they're considering cutting off gas supplies to Europe. Now, I don't know that the European Union itself can make those decisions. I think there's some debate whether it needs to be individual countries. But with that in mind, we're seeing that Putin is now becoming increasingly isolated, and doesn't really seem to be a future in terms of diplomatic relations, and there could be real issues in
Hmm.
continuing trade of any sort with the Western world. And I say specifically Western, Mark, because although you have international law and you have the United Nations organizations which span the world, in practice they tend to be dominated by the West. In particular, NATO is basically America and Britain, and everyone else follows suit, it seems. But when you talk about Russia and Putin, who can they trade with? Who can they be friends with? It's not just the Western world, is it?
No, no, it isn't. And I think that we should set the context here. So, what is really going on? Now, from Vladimir Putin's perspective, what he might be thinking of is that he's got a pincer movement going on around him. The
Mm.
NATO is a Western military alliance founded in part to ward off the threat of the Soviet Union in 1949. Now, President Putin has mentioned of Ukraine's intention to join the alliance was one of the reasons for the invasion of its neighbor. So, hence, the possible concept of Finland doing the same is yet another move on behalf of the West. So, what does this mean? Is it that perhaps the West is saying, look, we haven't got an issue with Russia per se, we've got an issue with Vladimir Putin, the man who, let's be honest, rules with an iron fist over Russia and has done more so over the last few decades. He is certainly a man who controls almost every aspect of the Russian community. But what is an issue here is that is Putin, for example, playing a rather long term strategic game? So, whilst he may recognize, and I'm sure he's considered before any of his moves, that he's going to be sanctioned, isolated, and again, as we all know, economically, not being able to supply gas to Western communities is a major hit, particularly financially. Russia relies on its resources extensively for its trade with foreign countries. But actually, does it have a few friends? And one of the things we haven't talked about, of course, is the China here.
Oh yeah.
So I think what we should ask here is, in this game plan that seems to be unfolding, where is it really all going? Is it that just Putin has got this all wrong, or is it that he's worked it out that even though that the West may not want him to be leading Russia, is it that really he's thinking actually he's going to win the long-term game?
Uh, I think that the idea from Russia of winning the long-term game is the way that they operate. They think in conflict in terms of decades rather than years, and I think that would almost certainly be part of his thinking. But I don't think that the reason for the conflict from the Russian point of view, the reason for the conflict in Ukraine, doesn't seem to be to do with that. It's had a long build-up. There are Russian-speaking peoples in the south and east of Ukraine who are targeted by factions within the Russian army, and they have ministers in government as well supporting them. We could say it's rather racist, but that's from our perspective. So, not putting anything on them, just looking at what they're actually doing. Well, you can see there was a move just shortly before the crisis started to stop being able to speak Russian in Ukraine. You had to just speak the Ukrainian language. Now, this is obviously an incendiary move. Now, coupled to that, you have increasing Western control over Ukraine, starting after the 2014 crisis, when, of course, Russia took over Crimea, uh, annexed Crimea, or saved it. That depends on your point of view. I mean, the Crimean people supposedly, reportedly from Russia, it's reported, were in favour of Russia, so they see themselves as rescuing them. Also, the public face of it is that Russia was coming to the rescue of the Donbass region in the east of Ukraine to save them from this persecution. Now, not just that, but to put a buffer between Russia and what was looking to be a Ukraine that was going to be allied, or rather be part of NATO. And there was even talk from President Zelensky of getting back nuclear weapons. So to me, it seems that the Russian calculus wasn't to do with finance and trade, but to do with security and the security both of the Russian-speaking peoples, the ethnically Russian peoples in the east of Ukraine, and also fear of NATO coming closer and closer to the Russian border.
Yes. Now, here's the thing to sort of close out on this one, because we know that the story is still unfolding. We've yet to see what is going to happen with NATO, with Western sanctions, and what Putin's next move is. But here's one point. So the point of this piece, this podcast, is there a way back for Putin?
Yeah.
And one question that I have here, and this is where I think that it's going to be very difficult for him, is this point that innocent, or should we say civilians, particularly, of course, obviously in Ukraine, have died. And as an international leader, and I'm trying to think of ahead for many years to come, how can he ever stand with credibility and integrity, knowing that this conflict has happened, um, to still be recognized and respected as an international leader, knowing that many, many people have died? What way back can he see where he would have had some standing a few years ago, where he doesn't have that now?
Mm. That's a very good question, but and I think that's deliberate. I think it's deliberate being framed in that way by the West to say, look, he's committed these atrocities. You could level the same accusations against, for example, Obama uh, in treatment of people, bombing people in Syria. People you always get innocents being killed, and you can argue, and indeed Russian media does, that the same could be said of Zelensky and
Hmm.
the Ukrainian forces. I don't think it's any different, but the difference is once he's accused of that, he's isolated in that the West is making it so there's no way back.
Oh, yes.
So I agree with you. It's just that I see him as being pushed into it,
Yes.
pushed into the situation where there is now no way back with the West. But what I would say, I mean, the point that I made right at the start of this episode, where I was saying, well, he doesn't need to just look to the West to be his friends, to be trading partners. He can, for example, sell his gas to China and to India, and,
Correct.
to Africa, I guess. So there could be um, a new world order, if you like,
Mhm.
because without that supply of gas, Europe's going to find it very difficult, particularly Germany. At
Yeah.
least in the short term, then maybe they can arrange things with America to be supplied from there. But uh, yeah, is there a way back for Vladimir Putin? Maybe not with Western countries, with Europe and America and Britain, but maybe there's a way back for him as an influential international leader in the East with China and India. I
Mhm.
think that
Mm.
increasingly seems to be the way forward.
Well,
Unless, and this is my hope, unless the Western countries aim for a negotiated peace with him and try and get him back into the truly international fold.
we need to know what our listeners think. I think that they should drop us a line, let us know what they think of the state of play. What do they think is going to happen next? Is there a way back for Vladimir Putin?